Have you experienced the awesome power of the Panasonic Real 3DO system? Obviously.
Presenting 3DO, the most advanced home gaming system in the universe. It's time to put away your toys.
3DO from Panasonic, Gold Star, and Creative Labs. A new low price and free games.
Mind-blowing graphics of Panasonic Real 3DO.
3DO.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO retrospective podcast where we talk about all things 3DO, the company, the console, and everything in between. I am Bill, and today I am actually going to be solo. My co-host Thrak is currently on vacation for these next 2 weeks, so in the meantime, I've decided to do a few solo episodes, going over a few different ideas I've had for a bit that I've been meaning to get around to. So for this episode, we're going to be structuring it a little differently. We're not going to be doing a news segment, mostly because I don't follow the news very well. I've also been going through a hell of a bad week at work. So yeah, I just need... This one is going to be a bit of a different thing. For this episode, we are going to be talking about a 3DO game that is very unique, kind of historic in a lot of ways. We are going to be talking about Meridian 59. Now, Meridian 59 is a very interesting game in 3DO's history. It is actually considered by a lot of people to be the first 3D massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMO. I don't want to say it is the first one because I'm not 100% sure on that, but it is considered to be the first 3D one anyways. And for the time, it was very unique. Development-wise, too, it went through a lot of interesting stuff. The game itself was created by Archetype Interactive, which was a company mostly known for this game. The company was run by a few people. It was run by Steve Sellers, Mike Sellers, John Hank, along with Andrew Krimiz. I'm sorry if I'm butchering any of these names, and Chris Krimiz, working mostly on the technical side. A few of those people would later go on to do some pretty notable things, like Andrew Krimiz. He actually went on to co-create Google Now, working at Google. And John Hank, notably, would later go on to form the company. Well, he would work for Google, and he was a big part of the creation of Google Earth. But he also went on to form Niantic, the company famous for Pokemon Go, which I do find kind of fascinating. I've never played Pokemon Go personally. I found it to be not really my thing. But, yeah, so there's some interesting history behind this game. Interestingly, while the game was being developed, it was kind of just, in a lot of ways, they were just kind of creating something for the first time that had never been seen before. They kind of passed around a few titles, because I know particularly originally they were thinking massively multiplayer role playing game, MMORPG was the original acronym they were kind of going with, really focusing on the massively multiplayer. A lot of crazy stuff. This game ran initially from 1996 all the way until 2000 when 3DO pulled the plug on it. It was later then picked up by Near Death Studios in 2002, who kept it going from 2002 to 2010, and it has since been repurchased by two of the original creators, who have the source code. Actually, the Kermes brothers, I think they're brothers. I'm not 100% sure on that, and they now have it as an open source software game, and you can still play Meridian 59 to this day. It's actually available on Steam, 100% free too, to play. And it's completely open source, and you can still hop in and experience its 1996 glory. Yeah. So I guess going into a little bit more of like what Meridian 59 is as a game. So it's obviously an MMORPG. It's mostly played through a first-person perspective. It is fully 3D. The environments, anyways. The game itself, it's kind of very similar, I'd say, to like it's got like kind of a Elder Scrolls vibe to it in a way. Completely first person. It's got almost an Elder Scrolls, almost like a RuneScape looking vibe, like early RuneScape. Um, and I believe at the time its biggest competitor was Ultima Online, which, if I am correct, yeah, Ultima Online came out the following year. Yes, I never played Ultima Online. My only real MMORPG history is with RuneScape. I kind of started with RuneScape and ended with RuneScape because, frankly, I can only really devote so much time to one MMO in my life. I did mess around with Meridian though, and it is a interesting game. Um, Graphically, I think actually the best way to describe it is it looks like Doom, um, very Doom-like. So gameplay wise, a lot of the game is based around PvP, player versus player. There are quests, of course, and a whole bunch of that stuff. You can develop your character, obtaining different proficiency skills in 7 different schools throughout the game's mythos. Very based around the typical sword and sorcery setting, where basically play as adventurer, go fight monsters, run into different NPCs, and kind of go around. The 59 comes from the fact that the game is set in the 59th provincial colony of an ancient empire which explored the universe through portals in a magic nexus. This is typical Western MMO MMO bullshit, but I kind of love it. Um, yeah. And the different schools were there was the weaponcraft, a physical combat, which is primarily physical combat, including dodging, parrying, weapon skills, archery, shields, and disarming. There is the Shillelagh, I think, based on the patron goddesses of rain and peace, healing, protection, uncursing, harming evil. Typical, I guess, mage. There's the core, based on another patron goddess of evil this time around. Different spells, more based around like damage and like curses. There's the Kronan. I'm very bad at these pronunciations, so bear with me. Based on another patron god. Their skills are based mostly around combat buffs. And then there's the Farron, which is based around earth and the elements, mostly elemental magic. There's the Rija, which is based around spells intended like to confuse and stuff. And then there's the Jala, which is a school based around music and different magical effects based around music and song. Kind of interesting, like, looking back at it, that, like, out of the 7 schools, only one of them is primarily based around physical combat, and the rest are all different forms of magic, which in a lot of MMOs later down the line would probably all be tied into one magic class and skill. It's interesting, though, they spread it out that far. I mean, it was the first one, so I guess it kind of makes sense in a lot of ways. The game also features different factions, and you could also join different player-created guilds. Very typical MMO stuff. And you basically just kind of go around the game world, following the game's plot for the most part. Going around exploring, fighting different enemies and other players. Yeah, very typical NPC like stuff. I mean, NPC, I can't talk today. Very typical MMO stuff. The game also did see frequent expansions over the time. The game is actually still updated to this day as well, which is kind of interesting. That the creators do still keep it running for the most part. Yeah. What's interesting too is, so 3DO had shut down the game's servers around 2000. And apparently one of the developers actually leaked the server software and files for one of the final expansions to a player, and it's since then basically it leaked online after that, and there's since been thriving free-to-play servers going around before the game just became free-to-play open source as it was. I believe most of these servers are no longer open, but they still do. I believe a lot of the fan servers are no longer open just because there are base servers that you can easily find anywhere. Looking into some other MMOs from the time, like there was definitely some earlier, like probably 2D ones, but I do want to say Meridian was definitely the first 3D. Because I think the only other one I can think of is The Realm Online, created by Sierra Online, which came out later in '96. I believe they were like almost right on top of each other. Yeah, because RuneScape didn't appear until like the early 2000s, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, going through that 96 to 2000, it's very interesting. I don't believe 3DO, aside from being the original publisher and probably backer, was not super deeply involved. They mostly just published and provided some funding to help the game get off the ground. Yeah, I believe it's a very basic MMO to this day. It is very accessible on Steam, which I find very fun. If you just hop over to Steam, it's super easy to find. Steam actually lists it as the first 3D massively multiplayer game released in 1996. It's back, and it's free to play. That's fun. They actually do list 3DO as the publisher, too, which is kind of cool. Although that's probably all fan-related. The little video is kind of fun, too. The game has almost like a Minecraft-esque look to it, but like a lot of the NPCs and stuff you'll run into in-game are like 2D, like sprite, like pre-rendered sprites. It's a bit janky looking by today's standards, but it has like a kind of a charm to it. Like just watching like some of the still frame footage, I can see why this game like really picked up. That being said, though, looking at reception for the game was very well received. I know a lot of people like I know Next Generation gave it three out of 5 stars. They preferred Ultima Online, and they called it second best. And I know like one of the biggest complaints of the game was that it felt small and overcrowded, which, to be fair, I could see, especially being an early MMO. Game sold fairly well too, although a lot of reviewers call the sales minuscule, and they claim it fizzled out very fast, which fair. 3DO had changed its business plan by that point, so the game kind of fell to the wayside. Computer Gaming World gave it 3 out of 4 stars. Computer Games Strategy Plus gave it 3 out of 4 stars as well. GamePro gave it an A minus. It does have that history though. I know '96 it was nominated for Role Playing Game of the Year, but it ultimately lost to The Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall, which I probably fair in all honesty. Yeah, it mostly nowadays is known for being the first 3D graphical MMO. And I believe it's considered one of the longest running too, considering it's still running to this day. Even if it's not massively well known or popular as others of its kind. It is crazy though, like 3DO of all companies is tied to this. 3DO was so weird. Like they had like a ton of different 3DO is like they came in and did a lot of very interesting things, but like they kind of went about everything they did the wrong way. Is kind of just like how I've always felt with the company. But yeah, looking at Steam again, the game has very positive reviews, which is kind of cool. Looking at a few of them, user reviews, some of these are kind of funny. There's a lot of recommended, like Meridian 59 is a hidden gem. This MMO is free to play and not pay to win. There is absolutely nothing in this game which is hidden behind a paywall. The original developers and some friends resurrected the game as a labor of love, and it is run on donations. Which you can actually go to Meridian59.com where they have all the games info and stuff. Nicely laid out. It's actually a very well put together website. Meridian59.com. The internet quest continues. Experience the living legend of MMOs. Fight alongside friends, side with powerful factions, explore diverse environments, and experience gameplay that came to define an entire genre. Totally free. No microtransactions, no pay to win. I love that they kind of like bring up, like, they just kind of push that. They push that point, because I mean, I get it. Especially with, like, I mean, I love RuneScape, but RuneScape is so pay to win nowadays, it's not even funny at times. RuneScape 3, anyways. I don't play old school, but I've heard old school is much more faithful to original RuneScape. Some of the points that they actually bring up on the website themselves: classic gameplay, dive into a world of pixelated charm, experience a world evolving since 1996, define your hero, craft your own unique character with a skill-based, non-class advancement system. Original PvP, hunt down outlaws and murderers in Meridian 59's signature player versus player combat. Player-driven justice, enforce the law through force, or become a Justicar and wield the gavel. They had a lot of fun with this game, it is very clear. Open and inclusive, connect with a welcoming online community of global players. Open source and evolving, contribute to a community-driven updates through open source. CNET apparently gave the game RPG of the Year in 1996, and it is in the MMO Hall of Fame inductee in 2013. The New Yorker famously said, "While there are certainly bigger MMOs, I'm not sure there were ever better games." That's an interesting way of putting it. Josh Strife Hayes said, "This game is dripping with style and heart. It was made with the best intentions, and that still shows." Waypoint/Vice, Meridian 59 keeps evolving long after its original servers were shut down. GameSpot, its gameplay and lasting value make Meridian 59 shine. Massively OP, Meridian 59 may not have been one of the biggest games in its genre, but it is arguably one of the most important. Eurogamer, finally. Arguably an extremely important historical document in the history of online video games. So, what I find from a lot of these reviews is the game, while probably not the greatest example of like what an MMO could be, what makes Meridian 59 shine is more of what it did historically. Like it in a lot of ways was kind of influential on the MMO genre. It set the groundwork in a lot of ways for what an MMO could be, and I think a lot of its contemporaries built around it, because you play the game and I see the vibes. I see a lot of like I said, Elder Scrolls elements. I see a lot of RuneScape vibes. I see a lot of I even see some like World of Warcraft aspects. Like Ultima obviously was nearby at the time. EverQuest, I am assuming, as well, which is fun. I do like to see. I find games like this very interesting from a historic standpoint. I guess I can go a bit more into graphics. Not graphics. I've heard it looks like Doom in Minecraft with like sort of to a degree. So yeah, I guess like to fully explain now how the class system works is there actually isn't technically a class system. It's not really. It was kind of different for the time. It's not based around levels or classes. Instead, each individual skill and attribute, including health, like develop independently to one another. Um, Kind of like some other MMOs that took this idea. Um, Health is acquired by killing monsters that are a challenge for the player. Magic is acquired by exploring and finding mana nodes in the game world. Um, all the base attributes, except for karma, are static, but they can be adjusted with certain items and spells temporarily. So it's kind of like your stats are for the most part set, and you can and basically you can bring up your health and magic, and I think everything else is based around your equipment essentially. So like obviously a stronger weapon will yield stronger attacks, stronger armor will deal more protection, stuff like that. It's kind of on the rudimentary side, almost Zelda-like in a sense. Um, yeah, in the schools, like with like the different okay, so this is where I get confused. The different schools, like the weapon craft, like and all the different magic ones, those aren't classes. Those are more you go there to boost different attribute points when you're building up your character. Um, yeah, and each school obviously has different focus and application in the gameplay. And you don't have to limit yourself to one single school. You can move between the different ones to level up different stats as you play the game. Very open for the time, very kind of giving players their own option, which is nice. It's like the most basic MMO by today's standards, but for what it does, I do find it kind of interesting. Yeah. Yeah, other than that, though, I don't remember from the little I played, the story was very pushed to the back. Like, you kind of would just talk to NPCs around the game. A lot of it was mostly like player driven. Like the guilds, because all the guilds were like player created, they had like voting systems, and you could like customize things like to appear on the different shields for the guilds. Um, there was an in game like bulletin board system called the News Globes, and it was like it was basically a personal mail system for both players and NPCs to send messages. Um, there was a political metagame, which is that's a thing. Sure, why not? Um, yeah, I think like one of the honestly biggest complaints with the game is that its game world was very small, and the expansion it took a lot of expansions to build it up. Because the game suffered. I think the game's biggest detraction was it suffered mostly from overcrowding at the time. Yeah. And a lot of typical like players can either obviously PvP or you just fight monsters to gain different points. Um, yeah, a lot of the other stuff is like world building. Um, like Meridian 59 features 6 cities and towns, um, political factions that fight for territory and power. Oh, this game is fascinating. Um, there's for towns that obviously throughout the game world, there's the rebellious mining town of Jasper, the royal city of Barlok. I'm probably mispronouncing that. The thriving but troubled Tos, the peaceful farming village of Meridian, and the crossroads lakeside university town of Kornoth, and the independent jungle island setting of Kokaten, I believe that is pronounced. I'm probably butchering that. Yeah, and I mentioned the guilds and like the political factions. That was mostly just ways of aligning players to different areas for different gameplay purposes and stuff like that. Yeah, Meridian 59. Um, so would this game be worth playing today is a question. Um, so the fact that the game is 100% free, um, doesn't feature any in-game payment at all, is 100% donation based. Um, probably probably a game I'd recommend a guide for starting out because I'm the little I played, it was not the most forward with explaining what to do. Um, but there are guides out there that can probably explain the mechanics a bit more. Honestly, I don't know if I'm not going to do a must play. Okay, stay away for this game just because it's kind of a MMOs are a kind of weird. They're their own weird little thing. I will say, recommendation wise, because it's obviously 100% free to play. There's it's not the most graphically intensive game. Like, it's probably not the hardest thing to play as long as you have a decent internet connection. Yeah. I'd say if you're a huge MMO fan and you're curious, give it a shot. I don't think it'll hurt just to mess around with. I'm sure there's like there's plenty of enjoyment, especially if you're into like old style games, especially if you want to just see like what an early MMO was. But if you're not really into the whole MMO thing and you're mostly just into a game that with a strict beginning to end, probably not. I'd probably say pass on this one because it's probably just not worth the time anymore. It's cool. It is very cool that it is like fully playable and available for like anyone to play if they are curious. But yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of bummed. There's just really not as much to say about this game as I was hoping. Because it is a very basic game. Its full soundtrack is available on Spotify, which is kind of cool. Gene Rosenberg composed a full soundtrack, and it is all on Spotify and Amazon Music. So if you'd like to check the music out, it is there. And there's some lovely screenshots available as well on the Meridian 95 website. And of course, it's available on Steam. And yeah, fully free. 100%. Like, no bullshit. Like, there's no bullshit to play this game. It's just, if you're into MMOs, go for it. If not, I'd pass. It's probably not worth that. But yeah, unfortunately, that's really all there is to put into this. If I had more time and planning, and if I could have found like a guest to play this with, I probably could have gone a little bit deeper. But I'm gonna say this is probably gonna be mostly a solo holdover episode. Going into it a little bit. Definitely one of the more interesting things 3DO did during its short lifespan towards the end of their console life and before they really started to sink. Like, this game was probably during the peak of 3DO, I'd say. Their early third-party days before they really took a dive. Yeah. So, other than that, yeah, short episode this time around, guys. Next week I will also be by myself. I might try to maybe get some guests, maybe do a little something. But yeah, so anyways, guys, once again, thank you for joining me on the 3DO Experience. You can find 3DO Experience on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify. Be sure to check us out over on the Superpod Network. That is superpodnetwork.com. Awesome site. You can find a whole bunch of different podcasts, videos, blogs, all sorts of fun stuff like that. We're currently in the middle of Spooktober. We'll be releasing a whole bunch of different Halloween, holiday-themed spooky blogs for the month. We've had a few come out on like Haunting Ground and such. I'm currently doing a blog on Carrier. It should be out at some point this month. Very obscure survival horror game for the Sega Dreamcast. Not very good, but you can see my blog for my thoughts on that. And if you're interested in participating in our game in the Superpod Network Game Club, this week's game is House of the Dead, the classic Sega rail shooter, which is available. Actually, there was a recent remake of it that is very easy to get your hands on. So if anyone would like to participate with that, that is currently going over on the Superpod Discord server. And yeah, guys, once again, thank you for joining me on the 3DO Experience. Next week, I'll hopefully have a bit more of a substance topic. And after that, Thrak will be back, and we'll be back to our standard 3DO content. But anyways, guys, once again, thank you for joining me, and I will see you all later.
If you're not playing on a 3DO system, what are you playing with?